presentation. This first one, I decided to start with the basics, first webinar, and today I'm going to talk to you of what I'm calling my 10 steps to a successful vegetable garden. What do you need to do to think about to have a good garden? We all get excited and in the spring and we start seeing all these vegetables by Lowe's, Home Depot, all the garden centers, and we buy we buy something on impulse. Well, that's great, wonderful. You get an A+ for enthusiasm, but an F- for proper planning. Okay, in the old days, the garden used to be this big, and trust me, one person with the right equipment, like a tractor and tiller and whatever other equipment, one person can handle all this. A sprayer, it does not take a lot of labor with the right equipment. Like I always say, the gardener with the most toys win. So you got enough toys, you got enough equipment, you can do a lot of work well. Unfortunately, most of us nowadays live in subdivisions, and this is a kind of typical backyard garden with few raised beds. And there's always interest in, and lately there's more and more interest in eating healthy, eating organic, eating local, and nothing beats eating fresh vegetables. Not only they're rich in vitamins and minerals and antioxidants, but they just always taste better because they are fresh. I know organic, hardcore organic aficionados who go to farmers market, and if there's nothing organic, they will buy because it is fresh. So in their mind, fresh, harvested the night before, trumps organic if it's not available or if it's available at the store. You want a garden, you want to start a vegetable garden, you can have an instant garden like this man and his kid did. You build a frame, you fill it with compost, and you have an instant garden. Of course, the cost of that compost, if you want to buy potting mix, can be prohibitive. What I do is I always go in the fall to the garden centers, and sometimes they have discounts on those bags. So instead of $3.75, sometimes they drop to $1.50 or $2. And that's when I buy them. If you have a garden center in your town or city, like we used to have in College Station, I used to buy garden mix, which was 50% sand and 50% mushroom compost, like I'm showing you here at the bottom. So the first time you add that 50% sand, 50% compost, it's pre-mixed, you just fill it and you plant in it. In the future, because the compost will break down, will be used by the soil microorganisms, you'll see it settle and you have like a couple of inches of empty height in your raised bed. Well, don't add more sand, that's not gonna disappear. So the first year you add that mixture, in the future you just add more compost and you can have an instant garden. And I also have on this slide Mel's special soil mix, 1/3 blended compost, 1/3 peat moss, and 1/3 coarse vermiculite. That is very similar to what the commercial bags of that we use in the greenhouses, like you see in the picture here. But very few people are willing to have access or buy vermiculite or things like that. So what are those first steps? And as we go with these, please count in your mind with me how many of these steps do you do and or don't. And also, let's count together how many are actual gardening and how many are not. So the first step is begin with a plan. Well, that's not gardening. That's inside with a pen and paper, with on front of the computer. things like that. So begin with a plan, get educated, learn. There's lots of resources on agri horticulture that you see here. I have a lot of information for homeowners, a lot of information for commercial producers. If your county has a Master Gardener help desk, they're a great resource. If they don't know the answer, they can find it for you. There's lots of local books for Texas, regional books that are suitable. So find, if you know a good gardener in your town or city, get them to give you advice. They can give you better advice than I can because I don't know where you can buy fertilizer in your town. I don't know where you can get what's the best tomato variety for your local town. A great gardener who's been doing it for years in your area is much better advice than me on such questions. So think about your garden and your garden design, and there's lots of reading and there's lots of books and lots of information, but there are some basic principles and or elements to consider that I'm showing you here. Efficiency, how big of an area you have and how well you want to use it. You have one raised bed, well then a square foot gardening is your best friend. Learn everything you want to do about square foot gardening and use that raised bed. You have 5 raised beds, then maybe another approach. How do you want to utilize the available space to the most? Convenience, is it near your residence? Do you live a little bit outside in the country? Do you have possibly pest issues, rabbits, raccoons, things like that? Do you have access to good quality water? If you're using city water, get that water tested, or call them and they'll send you the test. In some areas, the water is too salty, so that can be an issue. And also there's the aesthetic aspect in your design. Some people want it to be aesthetically pleasing, like an English garden, and some are just gardeners. So they don't care how it looks, just straight rows. And they just want the yield because they want to can, they want to freeze, they want to dehydrate and save food for later. Okay? There are good websites online now that helps you in your garden design, and I listed here 4 of them. And this middle one, Kitchen Garden Planner. I'm going to show you a few slides of it and tell you why I like it. When you click on that link, I like it because you can print out a pre-planned garden that they have, or you can design your own garden. So you choose the row width and length, like 4 by 8. In this case, it's 25 by 25. That's not what you want. And the beauty of it is, so let's say here I chose 3 by 6. So that's what you see, 6. You're not seeing all 3 rows. You're only seeing 2 out of the 3. But when you drag and drop, you drag and drop hot pepper to here, it tells you how many plants automatically you can squeeze in that 1 square foot. So it is on the principle of square foot gardening. I put leaf lettuce and it put automatically 16 for me. A lot of people do not really use their space efficiently. A gardener may put 4 at the most. Well, if you want leaf lettuce, you cut and you cut again. So you got to crowd them so you don't have weed issues. Beans, 4 plants here in that 1 square foot. That's the beauty of this website. I encourage you to go visit it and get ideas from it. When you're designing your garden, also you will learn with time what crops are what we call quick crops. They mature fast, they finish quick. What are medium season, medium length, and what are long-term crops. And here's a list of quick, within 30 to 60 days. You're all familiar with radish, but beets, mustard, bush beans, summer squash, those are start to harvest within either start to harvest within that period, like a summer squash, or the whole crop is gone within 30 days, like radishes. Within 30, 40 days, you're harvested the radish and gone. Beans, you start harvesting around 30 days, and whether bush bean or pole beans, then you have a little bit more time. And I'll tell you why this is important to know. So keep an idea of this list and keep an idea of this list. And the next one slide for the long crops. So this list here is for the moderate maturity rates within 60 to 80 days. And here's a list, your fall crops, your parsley, your carrots, your tomato, your cucumber. And finally, the long-term crop, or what we or slow maturity rate crops that need at least 80 days before you start harvesting are some varieties of tomatoes, garlic, your cantaloupes, your watermelon, cauliflower, things like that. So the first step is ask yourself how I want to design my garden. And also ask yourself, I don't have that in the slide, but I always remind all the listeners, how much time are you willing to invest in this? Gardening is a passion, is a hobby. We are, I think I call it like we're born with the potential to like gardening. But that desire or that passion is not enough if you don't put enough work in it. It is not set it and forget it. Every day you gotta be there a little bit, whether aesthetically not pleasing garden like the one on the bottom left, or something more modern and aesthetic and more expensive to operate. These two took a lot of time and money to get at that stage, and probably more time than money to get here. The first year is a lot of money. That first tomato is a $10 tomato. Chew it slow, enjoy it. But in the future, the cost will drop a lot. In future years, your cost is really seeds, fertilizer, pesticides, that's it. You don't have a lot of cost on the hardscape. And by hardscape, I mean the lumber, the potting mix, the soil, the equipment that you bought, the trellising that you bought, etc. So that's the first question. The next question, ask yourself, and again, we're still planning, we're still thinking, so that's not real gardening. Step number 2 is what crops you want to grow. You can grow everything, and in my garden, there are crops that I will never grow, even if I had the space for them, because to me, it's a lot cheaper to buy it than to grow it. I'm Lebanese. I like certain vegetables that we use in our cooking. That is a question that drives what I plant in my garden, what I cook and what I use, my onion, my garlic, my mint, my cilantro, parsley, calabaza squash, things like that, tomatoes, heirloom tomatoes, things like that. Another one idea is what you want to grow is something that's not available at the garden center. You see a catalog and you find a new variety that's disease resistant or looks like it's a new color of a tomato or a new shape of a squash, and you're interested in that. That's one to help you decide what you want to grow. Choose plants that will fit in your rotation plan, and we will get to that. So don't plant the whole garden of tomato year after year. You will have some disease problems in the future. And select plants that will fit in the available space. Like I told you, I never grow watermelon in my backyard garden because it's just too big. It covered my whole backyard. It's something I grow at my field. At my work in the field. It doesn't fit the available space. And there are lots of lists out there, and in one of my publications, we have a complete list. I'm showing you here a partial information on how many plants you need to grow for a family of 4, whether it's a plant number or row length. For example, beans, one row, 15 feet to 25 feet will give you enough beans to feed a family of four, not just fresh, but canned and things like that. Asparagus, 30 to 40 plants is way more than enough for a family of four. You must like asparagus well. And honestly, if you are a good gardener and you don't know canning, if you don't take classes in canning or food preservation, you're missing an important aspect of the gardening because they go well together. Imagine with 30 asparagus plants, you're going to have a lot more than enough. But if you know how to can them, then you can eat asparagus year long, not just during the spring season. Tomatoes, 10 to 15 plants, for example. Of course, I grow 5 plants because I can manage to get 20 pounds per plant. So 5 plants is 100 pounds, more than enough for me and to put few in the freezer and give away to some friends. Knowing what variety is important to use. Of course, in theory, all vegetables should grow everywhere. In theory, for most vegetables, onion, for example, can be an exception. Some tomato varieties can be an exception. But on this link here, I have a vegetable variety selector to help you. And if you go to Aggie Horticulture, and I know you know this link because you wouldn't be here if you did not go to that link. In here, in the vegetable resources, is where I told you I have all kind of fact sheets for homeowners and for commercial producers and etc. And small acreage horticulture crops is the link where you connected to today's webinar. But in the vegetable resources, if you click on that, what you will see is this, and I'm specifically going to show you the vegetable variety recommendations. When you click on that, you get a map, so you can click on your county, or you can select your county here from the drop-down list. So I chose Smith County, for example, Smith County, and the next question that will ask you will tell you select a vegetable. So you can select one vegetable, or you can say select all vegetable varieties, which is what I clicked, and you get something like that. You can click here on the upper left, you see download PDF, and that's something that you can print and save. And this is only a partial screen of the 2 or 3 pages. What you get for Smith County are recommended vegetable varieties listed alphabetically by the crop. And in case the crop has different types, like squash, they're also subgrouped by that, like summer, winter, lettuce, loose leaf, bib lettuce, things like that. So in addition to the name, you also have the days to harvest. So that can help you in, oops, it's too late to plant in the fall, in the summer, because it's gonna freeze before I get to harvest it, or helps you with those decision making. Or it'll help you in your succession planting. I want to plant one crop after another. Okay, I plant my beans now, I'll harvest it, finish it in 60 days. What else I can plant before before frost or during the summer? So that's what days of harvest helps you with those decisions. So that's the next step. You ask yourself about the design. You thought about where and how and what material you want to use. The second step are what crops you want to grow, you want to focus on. For totally beginning farmer, I recommend easy, simple crops that what I call fail-safe. Your cowpeas, your okra, they're well adapted to this climate. Cherry tomato instead of heirloom tomato as a beginning gardener are always a good choice because no matter how much abuse they get, they will still give you plenty of crop of cherry tomatoes, and you'll be happy. You don't get discouraged if you plant the very first time an heirloom tomato and you get one fruit. You get discouraged. So start with a cherry tomato. You get, I don't know, 200 cherries. potential yield, you can get 1,000 cherries from one plant, but you get 200, you're very happy, you think you did a great job. You feel you did a great job. Third step is choosing that site. Where is your garden site? There is no perfect site. Every location, especially in a subdivision, whether it's shading, whether it's soil, whether this, that, but there are some guidelines you can follow. You need minimum, 6 to 8 hours. You don't need full day of sun. That's for Michigan. That's for northern states. Here in Texas, we are blessed with too much sun. If you have a location in your garden that it gets full shade, starting at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, fine. That's a great garden, as long as it gets full sun in the morning. Access to water, soil drainage, how close to the trees and shrubs. Remember, a tree will spread roots sometimes twice the width of its shadow. So close to trees is not always a good idea. So light requirement, just to tell you, like I mentioned, 6 to 8 hours per day is good enough. So until 2 o'clock, full sunlight is fine. After that, if it's not partial shade or full shade, no problem. These vegetables on this slide require bright sunlight. So in that morning, like I told you, until 2 o'clock in the morning, the more sun they get, the better crop you will have and better yields you will have. These tolerate partial shade, and you can see that most of them are fall crops, your Brussels sprouts, your kale, your spinach, your mustard, your cabbages. You can't plant them in the spring. If you have an area that's shady, because shade is similar to a fall season, so you may not get the biggest yield, but it is something that you can use instead of putting a tomato in that spot and get something. Get some spinach, get some lettuce, get some parsley, get some kale instead of trying to put tomato, squash, cucumber, your summer crops that want more light and get very poor yields. Sweet potato and cauliflower are the two exceptions that it is best to have a location that you can get full sunlight all day long, because the more, the merrier. Okay. Step number 4. Step number 4 is now we are gardening. So the first 3 steps is planning, preparations, thinking, getting ready before we get to do the work. So, it's called garden site preparation, and I'll go over these 4 items briefly. You want to start with a good foundation, good soil. Your soil is your key to success. If you build a raised bed and fill it with good quality soil, you won half the battle. The rest is pests and diseases and watering and fertilizing. And that comes with experience, and that comes with keep learning and asking the right question to the right people. But if you start with poor soil, no matter how good you are, you're going to be struggling. So, and here's some information. I'm not going to read all of them, but I'll go over some of them. Clean, weed-free, no rocks, no debris. Always add organic matter. What I tell everybody is the last thing you want to do before planting is add organic matter. So you plant 2 gardens, one spring and one fall garden, you add organic matter twice. Just the last thing you want to do before planting. You add compost, organic matter, you mix it in, and then you plant. You can add organic matter and you get a soil test, and let's say it's 10% organic matter. I guarantee you in 3 months it's back down to 2% because it's used up by the soil microorganism, which breaks down the organic matter and releases the nutrients to the plant. So you are really feeding the soil and the life that's in the soil, which in turn feeds the plants. Ideal pH 6 to 7.5, and it may take 3 to 5 years to build good organic soil. I think in Texas it's gonna take longer than that because you have to keep adding organic matter all the time. Get a soil test. As a beginning gardener, I suggest get one every year for 3 years so that you see what you are doing to the garden soil and what it is, how it is responding. You know, you don't want the fertilizer mineral content on that soil to go up year after year. You're adding too much. You don't want it to go down year after year. That means you're taking out more than you're putting in, and you're killing the soil slowly. Okay? And you can't go wrong with organic matter. I call it magic. You can go with heavy clay soil that doesn't drain well and cracks like you see in the picture above. You add lots of organic matter and you can get a picture like you have below. I used coconut coir, C-O-I-R, coconut coir, and we did a study with it. And it's wonderful. It's a month later, that clay soil with the coconut core, you can put a pen in it like hot knife and butter. It did magic to it. Of course, 6 months later or a year later, it was gone. That's why I say you gotta keep adding organic matter. And in the same way, you have sandy soil that does not hold water, that drains very fast. You add organic matter, it will hold the water longer. So that's why I call it magic. If it doesn't drain like clay soil, it will help it drain. If it drains too much, you add organic matter, it will retain the water longer. Okay? You can't go wrong with organic matter. There are lots of ways you can add your compost that you see in these pictures and rototillamin. The Cadillac, the ideal approach is to do double digging, which shown in this picture here on the left. But that's in the old days when people had garden in the soil, in the field, in the ground, with a raised bed. Double digging is not necessary. Just add it to the top and mix it in, or just add it to the top and plant in that, which is what I do. So you can use the composted manure, but I don't recommend that to use it all the time because that's more fertilizer instead of what I call organic matter. And you don't want to burn the plants, you don't want to put too much fertilizer that can hurt the plants or add too much phosphorus that you don't need. But when I say organic matter, I mean plant material organic matter, not uh, someone cleaned his horse barn, and that has a mixture of manure and hay, and you compost it and you call it organic matter. No, that's composted manure. Be careful of the difference. Here is something that I did one time in similar to this picture here in Kentucky. Our Kentucky soil was on the clay side, clay, you know, on the clay side. I rototilled an area and I added um, organic matter and lots of sand, and I mixed it in. So the grass that you see here is, let's call the grass that you see here as the original soil, and this is the transitional soil, and here is the final product after the sand and the and a lot of compost. And I put it in the ratio of one sand and 3 times compost. Um, in that ratio, at least some other people have different recipes. And when you mix it in, that the final product that you see in this, on the left side was just wonderful. Pleasure to work with. You didn't even you need the whole to dig a hole to put your tomato transplant. It was that friable. Easy to work with. One way of adding organic matter is to, if you are a gardener and you don't want to let your garden over the winter go empty, just doing nothing, you can plant some winter crops. Fava bean tolerates a lot of cold, tolerates few freezes, and you can plant it thick. And like you see in the picture here on the right, and this is on the left is that same bed, but taken from the other angle. After the fava beans were cut, chopped, and then incorporated in the soil. And this is what we call green manure, where the crop, especially in the bean family, because they fix nitrogen from the air, and when they break down and rot in that, after they get buried and incorporated, they release all those minerals and nutrition to the following crop. So honestly, if you want to be a great gardener, you don't want that uh, uh, soil, that garden to go fallow, doing nothing. Crop, cover crop, crop, cover crop, things like that. Uh, Never let it just sit doing nothing, because you think it's doing nothing, but the microorganisms are eating your compost, weeds come in, insect lay eggs in there. Uh, just keep that soil busy, whether something you harvest like a crop or something you grow as a cover crop to mix in the soil and use as a green manure to feed the soil. Pre-plant irrigation that applies uh, only if you want to plant your summer garden in the spring. This time of year, the soil is well saturated. There's lots of moisture. But imagine you want to plant a garden in September, and you put the transplant and you add some water to it. But if that raised bed is dry, well, it will suck up that water, and that plant is stressed the next day. So if you were for a fall garden, if your raised bed is not moist, really moist, add a lot of water till it floods, let it drain. Maybe you have to do it again. Dig 6, 8 inches deep to see if the whole profile is moist, and then plant. I also recommend that you learn the art of solarizing. Here, solarizing, solarization is done on the raised bed. It can be done on a large area. What you need is a clear plastic. Here it looks white, but that's the angle of the picture. If you want clear plastic, you want a lot of water, so flood that raised bed, flood it again until there's a lot of moisture in there. Remove the weeds, remove the trash, remove everything, cover it with that clear plastic, tuck the edges, and 4 weeks in July, you the temperature underneath there will be 180 degrees every day. At the high temperature, like steam, that steam from the water will sanitize, will kill a lot of insect eggs, will kill a lot of small weeds, seeds. Uh, it's a great job. Will it kill the good microorganisms? Yes. Not all of them. I don't know. I haven't done the study. It kills all nematodes. Yes. Some people say some people say all of them. But so what if it kills all the good and bad microorganisms? Remember what I told you? Add uh, organic matter. The last thing you want to do before planting is add organic matter. When you do, you are putting back the good microorganisms that solarization got killed. Why did I say July? Because to solarize, well, most our tomatoes end in July. I mean, you can keep them all summer long, but the fruits will abort. Might as well remove and plant a different crop for fall tomatoes. So July is a good window to solarize and then come back with the fall crop afterwards. I have an extension publication on solarization in the homeowners section of agriculture. Step number 5. So 3, 4, 5 so far. Those 3 steps so far are active, what I'm calling active gardening. The first 3 were planning, thinking, preparation, and things like that. And here's more tips on planting. I recommend you use transplants as often as possible. Some crops are easy to transplant. Some crops are difficult to transplant, like squash. Not impossible. It's just a little tricky. If you squeeze the stem too hard when you're removing it from the cell, you may crush that stem. So, but if you can delicately remove it from the pot and put it in the soil, you can transplant squash. But immediately water after transplanting, but and definitely have that soil moisture there to begin with. You don't want to transplant it into soil that's more dry. And always plant at the same depth as was in the pot, with the exception of tomatoes. Tomatoes, even if it's a 2-foot long plant, you can bury horizontally most of that stem and leave the last 6 inches of the tip above ground, and all that stem that's buried will turn into roots. So tomato, uh, if you go to a garden center and you see a huge tomato plant that already has fruit, that's not trash. So remove the fruits, bury most of it, just leave the tip 6 inches, plant it. More importantly is that it does not have any diseases or insects. It is not past its prime to be planted. That's the beauty of tomatoes. Uh, of course, some crops like tomato, pepper, weed, eggplant, we never recommend you seed them directly because they need a long time to get to that 4 inch seedling that you see in the store. So you got to start them indoors with seeds. So I know people that already seeded their tomatoes 2 weeks ago in preparation, or this time in preparation for a spring garden if you have your own seeds. Um, okay, so that 4 inch seedling of tomato that you find that in the spring, that's 4 weeks old. A pepper is 6 weeks old. So you can imagine that you cannot win the time race with by seeding tomatoes directly or pepper directly. You got to start them early and transplant and gain those 4 weeks uh, in the spring. Lots of crops, especially the herbs and the small leafy vegetables, the radishes, things like those, can be seeded. There's lots of ways to seed them, I'll tell you. And nowadays, there's every packet has instruction on the depth and the row space and all that. And I also have them on the hand on Aggie Horticulture. But a general rule, if you get seeds from a friend or a neighbor and it doesn't come with instruction, a general rule is the seed depth is 3 times the width. Okay, 2 to 3 times the seed width. And many homeowners fail at germinating herbs because they plant them too deep. You don't want to put your lettuce 1 inch deep. That's way too deep. It's not going to make it to the surface. Might as well sprinkle it on the surface, sprinkle over a little bit of potting mix, water it well, and it'll do a better job there. You can broadcast seeds, and the way to have even distribution of, for example, your lettuce, your radish, is to rake one way, like I'm showing on the right picture here, rake one way and then rake crossways, and that will help you distribute the seeds evenly when you're broadcasting. Of course, we all tend to overseed, but hey, this is a great time when you're thinning to have an instant salad. I always overseed my radish, my lettuces, radish leaves. When they're young and tender, they're very delicious. They kind of taste like kale, like mustard greens. Eat them in a sandwich, eat them cooked. They're wonderful. The only vegetable I haven't acquired taste for is the carrots. When I thin them, that's the only one that I haven't acquired a taste for to eat fresh. I recommend you learn and you use row covers, the matted row cover. Agribon is a brand name, and I will type it in the chat box. What I have here is, and I use it both in the spring for frost protection, and I use it in the summer when I want to plant my fall crop for heat protection. Like in this picture on the bottom right, you see broccoli, and they are planted and covered. You put your tomato, your broccoli, cabbage, cauliflower for the fall, and it's hot, 100 degrees, soil temperature 90. Those plants can be stressed. So with this little bit of shade cover, it cools down. It's also a physical barrier against all the armyworms, the grasshoppers, and things like that. In the spring, there's no issue of armyworms and grasshoppers, but it will give them a pocket of warm air to survive any light frost temperatures. And this is fabric, so it lets light air in, lets air in, so you don't have to open it and close it. But it's delicate, so you have to be careful so it doesn't rip and tear. And here I used a 10 gauge wire cut into 4-foot length to make a mini tunnel. So look into it, think about it. If you can adopt it, you can have a much better garden, much better success with your garden. And just like I mentioned, you can't get enough benefit of compost. You can't get enough benefit with mulch, whether plastic mulch, and nowadays they do sell rolls of plastic mulch for the homeowner. You don't have to buy a 5,000-foot roll that we use or commercial growers use. You have a 200-foot roll for the small. Now, 200 is still a lot for a homeowner, but that's not the only benefit. You can use straw, you can use pine mulch, you can use rice hulls. I've used cardboard. Cardboard works great. No weeds will go through the cardboard. Anything to keep the moisture down, stop the weeds, and let all the water and nutrition go to the plant, not to the weeds. Step number 6, here's more tips during the season. Step number 5 was planting and early season advice and tips. Here are some tips during the season. Here again is that's garden fabric, the matted row cover that I showed you earlier, planted in a traditional garden. Here it is being used in raised bed. So here on the right, you see foam cups, which you cut the bottom off and you put around the plants. And the idea is that it like a physical barrier to protect those young seedlings from the crawling insects and the larvae and the worms that they will not find that. Tomato cages are great. If you grow tomatoes and when the plant is mature, if you have leaves touching the ground, you need to stop doing that. The minute the plant is, the minute you start seeing the first flower cluster, you can remove the first foot of leaves on the bottom of that plant. That helps with air circulation. That helps with a lot of things. Those bottom leaves are done. They did their work. They're just sitting there waiting for a disease to happen. And usually it's early blight that starts from the bottom up. Okay. Irrigation is very important. I went to Lowe's one time and I told them, I don't know anything about gardening. Can you help me with my irrigation? I want to buy parts from you. And I was pleasantly surprised. They knew all the parts and they described them well. So this is good improvement. I hope the Lowe's in your area is that knowledgeable. They have all the parts that you need. What I want to advise you is that on a 4-foot wide bed, you need minimum 3. If you can squeeze in 4, that's fine. You don't want 2, you don't want 1. You want even distribution, and you water the same amount of water, but in less time. But at least the benefit is really uniformity of application with 3 lines of drip irrigation available. The bottom left show you sprinkler irrigation. This I only recommend using this type if you just seeded greens like your lettuces or any herbs, so that you keep the top inch moist so they germinate and they don't die quickly. Once they have germinated, then I turn this overhead sprinkler and I switch to my drip irrigation. If you have failed growing herbs, more than likely they started germinating and then they withered and died quickly because you waited a day or even 6 hours to water them. You set up a sprinkler system. You put a timer that once an hour for 5 minutes to keep the soil surface moist, so that they never stress, not even for a minute, and then you'll have the best success with herbs. Water requirement. This slide is really for commercial growers. That's how we grow our vegetable. What is the water requirement in inches of water? Well, 1 inch per acre is equivalent to 2/3 of a gallon per square foot. So remember that number, 2/3 of a gallon per square foot. But from this slide, what I wanted to show you is the various requirement of plants. Who would think that the carrot, the small carrot, needs 12 to 6 inches per season, as much, which is very similar to a watermelon that can weigh 30 to 40 pounds or 10, 12 pounds, depending on the variety. So some crops are low water usage, some are high water usage. Look at the sweet corn, look at the tomato, 20, 26, your peppers. And that can, if you learn these things with experience, you'll learn that getting there is important, knowing these numbers. If your corn is not quite filled, or the ears are small, you did not add enough water. If your tomato gives you 5 pounds, or they cracked, you did not add enough water or regularly, things like that. If your onion is not huge, like you would see in stores, you did not add enough water. Okay. Disease control is a must. And I'm showing you here pictures of organic options. And I'm not in support of these. I just want to show you the trick of how to recognize